The courtroom was unusually full that morning. Spectators whispered among themselves, shuffling into their seats, eager to witness what promised to be a high-profile trial. The case involved a wealthy businessman accused of fraud, and curiosity had drawn everyone, from local journalists, everyday townsfolk, hoping to see justice play out. At the center of it all sat Judge Harrison, a man known as much for his sharp tongue as for his iron gavel. His reputation preceded him, arrogant, strict, and often dismissive of those he felt were beneath him. Judge Harrison adjusted his robe and scanned the room with the air of a man who believed the courtroom was his personal kingdom. His eyes narrowed at the lawyers preparing their files, the jurors settling in, and a defendant who appeared far too confident for someone accused of serious crimes. Just then, the doors at the back of the room opened. A young woman walked in quietly. She wasn't dressed in an expensive suit or adorned with flashy accessories. Instead, she wore a modest blazer, carried a single folder, and moved with a calm grace. Her name was Evelyn Carter. Few people recognized her, and those who did whispered with skepticism. She must be someone's assistant, one observer murmured. Or maybe a clerk, another added. Evelyn ignored the murmurs. She walked to the prosecutor's table and took her seat, arranging her notes neatly. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, but inside, she could feel the weight of every eye in the room measuring her, doubting her, underestimating her. The proceedings began. The defense attorney introduced himself with confidence, his words rolling smoothly as he greeted the court. Then it was Evelyn's turn. She stood, poised, and began. "Good morning, Your Honor, members of the court. My name is—" But before she could finish, Judge Harrison raised a hand and cut her off mid-sentence. "That will be enough," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. His gaze fixed on Evelyn as if she were an intruder in his court. "Miss, whatever your name is, let me stop you right there. This is a serious courtroom handling serious matters. We don't have time for inexperienced interns trying to play lawyer." A ripple of uneasy laughter spread through the courtroom. The defense attorney smirked, clearly enjoying the scene. Evelyn's cheeks burned, but she steadied herself, refusing to let the sting of humiliation show too strongly. "With respect, Your Honor," she replied calmly, "I am the prosecutor assigned to this case. My name is Evelyn Carter, and—" Judge Harrison leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Prosecutor? You?" He chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. "I've seen fresh law graduates, but this is absurd. Tell me, Miss Carter, how old are you? 23? 24? Do you even understand the complexity of this case?" The spectators chuckled again, though this time some looked uncomfortable at the harshness of his words. Evelyn inhaled deeply, gripping her folder. She could feel the knot tightening in her stomach, but her voice remained steady. "I assure you, Your Honor, I am fully prepared to handle this matter with the seriousness it deserves." The judge's smile vanished, replaced by a sharp glare. He leaned forward, his words like daggers. "Prepared? No, Miss Carter. People like you, young, inexperienced, overly ambitious, have no place making decisions in a serious court of law. This is not a classroom. This is not a playground. And I will not allow this trial to become a mockery because someone decided to give a child a chance to play attorney." The room fell silent. Even the laughter had died down. Evelyn stood frozen, her heart pounding, her pride bruised. She bit the inside of her cheek to stop her emotions from spilling out. Her eyes revealed the sting of humiliation, but her voice stayed firm. "Understood, Your Honor," she said quietly. Judge Harrison gave a dismissive wave of his hand, as though brushing her existence aside. And with that, the first session of the trial continued, under a shadow of arrogance and disdain that no one yet realized would soon come back to haunt the mighty judge. The morning session dragged on, and though Evelyn remained silent, her mind raced. Every word Judge Harrison spoke was a reminder of his contempt. Every smirk from the defense attorney felt like salt in an open wound. She had been underestimated before, but rarely so publicly, and rarely in a setting where the stakes were so high. Yet, beneath the sting of humiliation, Evelyn held on to her composure. She reminded herself of the bigger picture. She had not fought her way through law school, late nights, and countless dismissals to be broken by arrogance. There was a reason she had been entrusted with this case, and soon enough, everyone would see why. By midday, the court recessed. Spectators spilled into the hallway, buzzing about the judge's words. Some mocked Evelyn's quiet demeanor, whispering that she would crumble before the defense attorney's tactics. Others frowned, uneasy with the judge's harshness. She seemed prepared, one woman said. Maybe so, but Judge Harrison won't let her get a word in, another replied. Meanwhile, Evelyn stepped outside of the courtyard, away from the noise. She opened her folder, reviewed her notes, and reminded herself of the trial's importance. But as she did, her phone buzzed. It was a message from the district attorney's office. Confirmation! Your formal swearing in as district attorney will be announced at tomorrow's press briefing. Proceed as planned. Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. For now, the court saw her as just another prosecutor, dismissed and humiliated. But in less than 24 hours, everything would change. Back in the courtroom, the tension mounted as testimony began. The defense attorney moved aggressively, questioning witnesses with confidence that bordered on arrogance. Judge Harrison often nodded in approval, almost as though the defense and the bench were on the same side. Evelyn watched silently, taking notes, waiting for her turn. When she finally rose to question a witness, the interruptions began almost immediately. Objection! The defense attorney smirked. Sustained. Judge Harrison cut in without hesitation, barely letting Evelyn complete her sentence. Again and again, the pattern repeated. The judge rolled his eyes at her phrasing, scoffed at her evidence, and even told the jury to disregard the young lady's fumbling attempts. The gallery shifted uncomfortably. Some whispered that this was no longer about law. It was personal. Still, Evelyn endured. Her calm voice persisted. Her questions sharpened, and though her progress was slow, cracks began to show in the defense's confidence. Witnesses hesitated. Evidence stacked quietly in her favor. But Judge Harrison refused to acknowledge it, cutting her off at every turn. Finally, the session ended. The judge's parting words were laced with venom. This trial continues tomorrow, he declared, glaring at Evelyn. But mark my words, without competence in the prosecutor's chair, this case is headed straight for dismissal. I will not tolerate mediocrity in my courtroom. The defense attorney smirked, gathering his papers with satisfaction. Evelyn closed her folder, hiding the fire in her eyes. As the room emptied, a few onlookers approached her quietly. You did well, Miss Carter, one said softly. Don't let him get to you, another added. Evelyn nodded politely, though she barely spoke. She didn't need to defend herself, not yet. Tomorrow, the truth would defend her louder than any argument could. That evening, Judge Harrison sat in his chambers, feet propped on his desk, sipping coffee. He chuckled as he recalled the look on Evelyn's face earlier that day. To him, she was just another ambitious young lawyer, fumbling in a world too large for her. He had no idea how wrong he was, because while he laughed, Evelyn was preparing, not just for another day in court, but for the moment when her true identity would be revealed. When the gavel struck tomorrow, she would no longer be the inexperienced assistant. She would be the district attorney, the highest prosecutorial authority in the county. And Judge Harrison? He would have no choice but to face the weight of his own arrogance. The next morning, the courthouse was even more crowded than before. Word of the heated exchanges had spread, and curious onlookers filled the gallery. Reporters lingered in the hallway, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. Judge Harrison strode into the courtroom with his usual air of superiority. He adjusted his robe, cleared his throat, and glanced toward the prosecutor's table. Evelyn Carter sat calmly, her folder neatly stacked before her, her eyes steady. The defense attorney leaned over and whispered mockingly, "Ready to embarrass yourself again, Miss Carter?" Evelyn didn't flinch. She simply replied, "More ready than you know." Proceedings began. Witnesses were called, and Evelyn once again rose to question them. But this time there was a subtle shift. Her voice carried more confidence, her questions more precision. Each word landed with weight, weaving a narrative the jury could follow clearly. Still, Judge Harrison tried to dismiss her. "Move along, counselor. You're wasting the court's time." But Evelyn didn't falter. She pressed forward, her calmness drawing murmurs of approval from the audience. Midway through the session, a court clerk entered quietly and handed Judge Harrison an envelope. He opened it, frowned, then adjusted his glasses. It was an official memorandum from the district attorney's office. His face paled slightly as he read the headline. Effective immediately, Evelyn Carter, district attorney. Sworn and confirmed. Gasps spread across the gallery as the clerk stepped forward and announced, Your Honor, for the record, Ms. Evelyn Carter is no longer acting prosecutor. She is the district attorney of this county. The room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed and spectators whispered in disbelief. The defense attorney's smirk vanished, replaced with a slack-jawed stare. Judge Harrison froze. His arrogance, so secure a moment ago, wavered. He cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to mask his discomfort. Well, congratulations, Ms. Carter. Though I expect even district attorneys must respect proper courtroom decorum. Evelyn rose slowly, her voice clear and unwavering. With all due respect, Your Honor, decorum is built on mutual respect. Yesterday, I endured ridicule in silence. But today, I stand not only as prosecutor, but as the chief law enforcement officer of this county. I will not allow prejudice or arrogance to silence the pursuit of justice. The gallery broke into applause before the bailiff called for order. Even some jurors smiled, emboldened by her words. From that moment, the trial shifted. Judge Harrison, visibly unsettled, no longer interrupted her. The defense attorney stumbled over his objections, struggling to regain footing. And Evelyn? She commanded the courtroom with quiet authority, dismantling the defense's case piece by piece. By the time she delivered her closing argument, the jury was leaning forward in rapt attention. Justice is not about titles or appearances, she declared. It is about truth. And the truth has spoken clearly in this courtroom. The verdict came swiftly, guilty. The gallery erupted once more, not only for case one, but for the story of a woman who rose above humiliation to prove her worth. As the gavel struck, Judge Harrison avoided Evelyn's eyes. His arrogance had been replaced by something else, shame. For the first time in years, he felt the sting of humility. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Evelyn. Microphones and cameras captured her calm smile as she spoke. This case was never about me, she said. It was about justice. But let it also remind us that respect should never be withheld because of someone's age, gender, or appearance. The measure of a person lies in their actions, not in assumptions. Her words spread beyond the courthouse, shared across headlines and social media. People everywhere were inspired by the young district attorney, who had turned humiliation into triumph. And Judge Harrison? He would be remembered, not for his rulings, but for the lesson he learned the hard way, that arrogance crumbles in the face of truth, and respect denied today may become respect demanded tomorrow.